All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode number 122 of Groove Swing Speak right here live on the Studio W, your global radio network. You guys already know we simply think 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, with some of the finest programs you can find anywhere around the globe. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a action-packed show tonight, and we've got two guests on. First is Sligh, and our main guest is Iris Settle. And so, without further ado, I'm going to let Tanisha Holmes do the honors.
I would say, hola, hello, everybody.
Hello, Tanisha.
I want to introduce Sligh, one of our Swing Fi Swing sisters, one of my sisters. So Sligh is a 22-year-old recent graduate of Bennett College. She joined Swing Fi Swing Social Fellowship Incorporated on October 26, 2025 as the ace of the Soulful Rebirth line of the Ebony chapter. In undergrad, Kai served as a secretary and a treasurer for Ebony chapter. She currently serves as her community as Miss River City, a local title for Miss South Carolina Scholarship Organization. Her platform Beauty is called BEAUTY. Be exclusively, authentically, unapologetic, and truly to yourself. Is a mental health center initiative that has touched over 500 lives since 2022. From hosting BEAUTY, which is beauty sessions, to provide online resources, Ciaran's pride herself in doing her part as to bring forth confidence back to South Carolina. We want to welcome Sligh to the show. And once again, hola, my sister.
Welcome. Unmute your mic, dear. Let's see. Okay, let's see. There you are. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hola, my sister.
Hola.
Hello, sis.
Hello.
You know what's really amazing about this? We have two South Carolinians on tonight. Iris Settle was born and reared in South Carolina. She's a native there as well. Okay, so we're going to have you on for a few minutes, Ciaran, and then you might want to stick around and listen to Iris because she has a lot to say, and she can give you a lot of history about South Carolina and how that contributed mightily to civil rights. So Ciaran, tell us a little bit, Tanisha read your bio, and so you graduate Benedict College, and you joined Swing Fi Swing. We understand that. But tell us a little bit about how you serve in your community as Miss River City.
Yes. So first off, I want to thank you guys for having me on here. I know we had a little time constraint, so I'm very grateful for you guys for fitting me in today. One of the ways I enjoy serving my community is through beauty, my platform, be exquisitely, authentically, unapologetically, and truly you. When I was a freshman at Benedict College, that was something I started mainly for myself. It was more so of a social media initiative at the time. I created a social media account. I started talking about my ups and downs as a Black student who came from a predominantly white school system to an HBCU. That was a culture shock, as you could imagine. So it went from me posting about my daily life in college to now being able to stand before you today as a proud Black woman, a proud graduate from Benedict College. I graduated on May 8th at 7 p.m. I have a bachelor's of arts in studio art and psychology. I graduated summa cum laude, and that is one of my greatest achievements. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. We'll go around. We'll go around the horn a little bit, and everyone jump in. And whatever questions you have for Ciaran, please jump in. Okay, Robert.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us tonight on episode 122, as said before. I just wanted to find out how you got into the field of pageantry, how that came about, and who maybe led you into it, or was it something that you felt that you wanted to get into? So just give a little bit of a background.
Right. So I have been involved in pageantry for 15, probably going on 16 years now. My mom was an LED for the Miss South Carolina Scholarship Organization. And from watching her and doing what we call the Saturday morning theme pageants, I found a love for going on stage. But one of the things that people don't realize about pageantry is it builds up those skills, public speaking, self confidence, being able to walk into a room and understand that you hold the power in whatever you are talking about. I have anxiety. And one of the things that I'm proud of with my work in pageantry is being able to sit before you guys today and talk about my story. I wouldn't have been able to do that without being involved in pageantry. Yes, you get to put on pretty dresses and get all dolled up and get to wear a sash for about a year or so. But what that really does for the individual is build up those skills, especially with community service. Community service is very big in a lot of the pageant systems here, such as the Miss America organization. That's where my community service initiative Beauty came from. It started as community service, and just to see it blossom into what it is now is a blessing.
That's excellent. In regards to your step now as Miss River City, where does this now lead to in regards to other pageants and what you're eligible for?
Yes, so actually, in next week, I will be leaving, I believe on Thursday, to go compete at Miss South Carolina. That is a week long thing in Columbia, South Carolina. And I will compete in interview. Thank you. Thank you. I will compete in interview, on stage question, evening gown, talent, and I believe, oh, in fitness, excuse me. So all those things combined, that is how they pick the title holder for the next year, and then they will go on to Miss America. So that as my next steps, and afterwards, whether I win Miss South Carolina or not, I will still hold the title of Miss River City for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And we look forward to you coming back on the show and recognizing you as the new Miss America, not just South Carolina, just America. That's
you.
what it's right about now.
Thank you so much. That's the goal. One day.
Clayton?
Yes, good evening, everyone. And congratulations
Thank you.
to all of your accomplishments. And
Thank you.
we're looking forward to you being Miss America because we're going to reach high on this level. Outside of your pageantry and the things that you're doing in the beauty industry, uh, what other things are you doing for your future endeavors?
So, like I stated earlier, I have a bachelor's of arts and I studied studio art and psychology. I want to move on to get my master's in counseling in the hopes to become, I shouldn't say hopes, I will become an art therapist one day. My
Hmm.
internship was at the South Carolina Department of Corrections for my senior year. I worked with inmates in maximum security prisons, and some of these men and women, they would sit at tables basically chained from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. So that while that was kind of scary and kind of eye opening for me, that was where I realized that, mental health counseling is real. People need help. And my expertise in art will help with that, giving people a creative outlet. That was what I did. I didn't know I was doing it until I got to college. And I learned that what I was essentially doing throughout the years was art therapy for myself. but my hope is to bring more eyes into the world of art therapy, even different creative therapy itself, music therapy, dance therapy, because some people aren't able to verbally say what is going on, but if they have another outlet, that helps them as well. So those are my plans as of right
And I can totally relate because I was a fine arts education major at Virginia State.
now.
I'm a groove that hailed out of Virginia State University, and
Okay.
art is my background as well. But I never realized there was an art therapy, but I understand the
Mm,
therapeutic uh, help that art can bring to a person because it's therapeutic to me.
Mm,
Because when I get into my art, I can navigate away from all the worldly mess, and I can really get spiritual, and I can get um, a
mm,
lot of healing from my art
yes.
because I'm able to get all that toxic stuff out of my system, so to speak.
Hmm.
So I understand where you're coming from, and I wish you well in that endeavor as well.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm glad to
Tanisha,
know that it's touched you as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
outstanding, outstanding. Before we go to our main guest here, Tanisha, what questions do you have for Kyra?
I just want to say I'm really impressed with you that you actually want to go into the impacted community, the just and impacted community, to actually work with that particular community. So I commend you on that too. But
Thank
I was
you.
going to mess with you. I was going to mess with you a little bit. So I was going to
All
I was going to
right.
act like a judge for your upcoming pageant. Okay.
Listen, I always need practice.
You ready? You ready? Okay. It's going to be a simple question. So I have two questions.
Mhm.
So what are some quirky or things or facts about you that is not actually going to be on your resume when you present that over to the judges? That's one question. And what does the title mean to you once you win the title? What's your goal once you win that title?
Good stuff.
So I love video games.
Okay. Okay.
That is something you would look at me and probably would not think of. I love video games. If you look at my computer right now on Steam, you can see at least 30 games that I play on rotation. And I don't even know what it is. I don't know if that's a problem that I have, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that soothes me. It's something that helps me get through the day. And to me, a title holder is someone who's able to leave a legacy with their platform. It's one thing to write everything down, it's one thing to have a plan. I want to raise this amount of money, I want to visit this many schools, I want to pack this many people. But if they can't connect with you in
Mm-hmm.
a way that feels genuine, in a way that feels, oh, I'm talking to a human being and
Mm-hmm.
not someone who puts on a mask as soon as they put their crown on. I am authentic every day of my life. Who you are talking to right now is who I am
Mm-hmm.
on an everyday basis. I want people to be able to talk to me and feel safe, to feel calm around me, and I want people to know that, oh, this organization prides themselves in choosing title holders who have that ability, to talk to people and make them feel like they're talking to a human.
That's awesome. And my last question, William. So a lot of folks actually, when they're doing pageant work, or they actually have someone that they idolize. So as a judge, I'm looking for an answer. So the question is, do you have an idol? Do you idolize yourself?
Mm.
Oh goodness. That is a loaded question right there. I I idolize Daja Dial, Daja Davidson. She
Mm-hmm.
was the 2015 Miss South Carolina, and I remember watching her get crowned, and I remember her going to Miss America and being in the top 7. She has always been a role model for me. I believe she was the 4th Black Miss South Carolina. I could be wrong on that, but just to meet her, she, like I said, she's authentic, she's a genuine person, and she's always instilled in me from the beginning that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And to have an idol like that from 12 years old to now 22 years old, that's 10 years that I've known her and have been able to speak with her. I love her so much.
Mhm. Outstanding, outstanding. And now to our main guest here, Iris. Before I give you a proper introduction, As a fellow South Carolinian, what questions or what comments or statement would you have for Kyron?
Can you guys hear me?
A little louder, please. Turn up your
Little
mic.
Okay. Okay, let me turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, turn up your mic.
Okay, is that better?
Uh, More, please.
More. I have it as high as I. How about that?
No.
Because I missed my mic settings that I had, I lost just a little while ago. So that's why I was trying to figure out. So you can't hear me. So let me come out of here. And how's this? I'll just speak from the computer. Is that
We
better?
need you a little bit louder, as loud as you can get it.
That's as loud as it can go for
Okay.
right now. Because my settings lost. I lost my settings when I was backstage. I had them prepped all day.
Okay. All right. Well,
Can you
we'll
hear
deal with
this?
that.
Is that better?
I'm getting some feedback from someone. Okay.
Okay.
Where am I getting this from? Okay. All right. Let's see.
Apologize for that, you guys. I was just sitting here and it just went out on me.
Okay. All right. I'm getting feedback. If you guys have any external speakers on, or like your phone or anything like that, turn it down, turn it off. Okay. Because I've been looking forward to this because I've spoken to Iris on several occasions. We had a great conversation just yesterday, and she was telling me about the history of South Carolina. There's so many things that South Carolina has, and the people of South Carolina, especially us in South
Yeah.
Carolina, have impacted that community so much. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Iris,
Can
the
you hear me
floor is
now?
yours.
Can you hear me better?
Okay.
Can you
Can you
guys hear me
guys hear
better?
Iris okay? All right. Well, go on,
Okay,
Iris.
great. Okay. So I turned all the other things off so you could hear me a little bit better.
Okay.
First of all, William, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Yes, there is a lot of history in South Carolina, and I was going through my head because I was trying to remember. Maybe you can help me in terms of answering that question. There was another young lady who was in the Miss South, that was Miss South Carolina. She lived right down the street from me on Ashley Avenue. Oh my God! And her sister was my little sister at Bennett, and I can't believe I can't remember her name. Oh gosh, do you remember who she was? She was from South Carolina, one of the few black
I
finalists.
know of Crystal Garrett and Jada Samuel. Those are the other two
The other two
that I
that you
know of.
know, but she would have been back in the day when
Okay.
I was a teenager. So
Oh,
that would have been like in the 80s.
oh goodness.
But
I'll have to go look at that.
yeah, but that would be in the 80s. And when I went, I'm a graduate of Bennett College. A lot of times people get our schools mixed up, Benedict and Bennett, but I was at Bennett across the street from North Carolina A&T, and we're a private girls, black women's college. And that's where I met her. Well, we lived down the street from each other, but that's when I got to meet her sister. And so I learned a lot about pageantry. So I have a question for you about pageantry because I think that it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time for you to get to the point where you are, where you feel comfortable in yourself and what you're doing. So, what was the one thing that sparked your interest in doing that, and how can we spark that interest in other young women to want to exhibit that type of pageantry in terms of self love? Can you help me with that?
So I will say when I started pageantry, it
Uh
was
huh.
not as diverse as it is now.
Right.
I spoke about the Saturday morning theme pageants earlier, and a lot of the times I was the only black contestant in my group, sometimes maybe
Wow.
in the entire pageant.
Uh
But
huh.
I was happy to be there. I was proud to be a part of their programs because that was paving the way for other little black girls to do the same. And like I spoke about Dodger Dial, Crystal Garrett, Jada Samuel, I've been able to meet all of them. In fact, I believe Crystal Garrett was the first Miss South Carolina who I was able to physically see. And she grabbed, mom tells the story all the time. She was coming down the Marriott stairs in Spartanburg, and she was in this beautiful dress. And I said, "Oh my God, there's a princess. Oh my goodness." And she came down and she held my hand. She introduced herself. And that was important. That's important To me, it should be important to everyone because that was the first moment I had a role model. I had someone to look at and say, you know what, this dream can come into fruition. This blessing can be for anyone who puts their mind to it. And this is my second time it will be the second time for me competing at Miss South Carolina. And what keeps me going in pageantry is I see the little girls who look at me in my gown. I see the little girls on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They find me and they watch my videos and they look at my posts. Their parents love to tell me that they look up to me. And that is why I keep going, because someone needs to be a role model to these little girls. Someone needs to be the one to say, you know, I had a dream. And while it may not be on the path that the linear path that we all think of, it's a path to help others.
Okay. Oh boy. Let's do this.
And now,
Iris.
William, now I forgot your question, but I wanted to make sure that I asked that question because I think it's so important to have young role models like you. Thank you so much.
Yes, great, great. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. I'm getting some echo on your end there, Iris. Do you have any external things on at all? But let's do this. Let's do this. Let me give Miss Settle a proper introduction. And like I said, I had the chance of speaking to her on several occasions, and her knowledge of uh, not only South Carolina but Black history in general is so vast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you right now, it's amazing. And what did she say? What does she bring to the table? She's a spirit teller. She doesn't document history. She carries the downloads and the voices of our ancestors, ensuring the legacies are preserved with the honor they deserve. Systems architect. She take the chaos of modern technology, AI, automation, and digital strategy and turn it into a clear functioning path so you can focus on your purpose rather than your the technical noise. Current focus. She's currently in the final stages of executive production for Eye on the Sparrow, the definitive documentary project archiving the life and career of James the Bird Sparrow, our groove brother. You remember him, guys. The difference. While others build business plans, she builds structural intelligence. She combines the deep metaphysical understanding of who we are and the tools of what we can, of the tools we can do to help reclaim your standing and move in divine flow. Her mission as an app founder, she's spreading, here's spearheading. Okay, hold on one second. I'm getting echoes there. Spearheading, okay, a documentary to archive a life's work or streamlining a high level organization project. She's here to ensure that your vision isn't just seen, it's felt. Let's talk about her education. Doctoral candidate, the metaphysical science, University of Sedona, Arizona, an MA and Ed higher education, middle school, Miami University, Ohio, a bachelor's middle school education, Bennett College for Women in North Carolina, affiliation, legacy member of Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, to the set, Miss Iris Settle. Iris, I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Is this much better?
Oh, let's see. Well, I can hear a little background, but we'll get through it somehow. Okay.
Okay. All right. I have everything cut off. There's nothing cut on right now.
Okay.
And I think I'm up to 100% here. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. So, William, tell me, where do you want me to start? I mean, there's so many places to start here. What particular area would you like me to start in terms of sharing with everyone tonight? It's such a pleasure to be here with you in under the circumstance of being able to share my life and my experience and how I learned how to make a better life for others, and knowing that that was my destiny. I was destined to do this. It wasn't like, oh, I woke up one morning and knew it. You know, as you get older, you realize there's certain things that you're here to do, and that's just what I'm here to do. So where would you like me to start? Because it's such a broad field.
It is such a broad field. Let's start with this. Yesterday, you were telling me the story about. Listen to me. As a matter of fact, I was pulling up something, and I think that even Wikipedia has it wrong based on what you were telling me yesterday, and that is uh, when and how Americans, Black Americans, got here to this country. I read something several days ago that we were here before the settlers. And in our history books, it tells us, we all came on slave ships, which isn't accurate at all. So I want you to start right there. Where do we come from? How long have we been here? How did we get here? Okay, let's do this. There
Is
you
that,
are.
you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, because I'm just taking the mute off. Yeah, one of the things that enlightened me, ever since I was a little girl, I always felt that I was so much in my heart, I just knew there was something greater inside of me than what I heard all around me. In the sense of, I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. I was 2 years old when my dad was moved there. The bishop of the AME church moved him there because he said, I need you to go to a particular church. They're going to need your expertise there. And so we were living in this small town out, near Georgetown and Myrtle Beach. And I'm two, so I don't know what's going on in the world, but there was a lot going on in the world in the early 60s. And so what it taught me as I looked around, I saw all of these people that had these beautiful stories and these beautiful cultures. And I said, all of us can't come from nothing. Where does our story begin? Where does our story begin? So I started digging and did a lot of research. And the more I read and the more I delved, I found out that we had been here. I talked to my cousin in DC who loves doing archival histories of families and genealogy, and she shared with me that we shared the same. Well, her grandfather her great grandfather was my grandfather, and her mom is my first cousin. So when we went back on our mother's and father's side, we found out that my mother's family on my dad's side had gone back to being here in this country to 1527. Documented 1527. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then on my grandmother's side, it was documented all the way back to 1547. So if you look at 1547 and 1527, that is definitely almost 100 years before King Charles came over and discovered Charleston, South Carolina, which was first called Charlestown. And then, of course, that doesn't even put you too much close to the 1619 project that they talked about when all of us came over in the Atlantic slave trade. So I just started tuning in as a child, not knowing what was going on. And as I became older, just tuning in, and I was realizing that I could hear things. I could feel things and I could hear things. And when I started to listen, then I could hear all the things leading me to the books or leading me to the people or leading me to the places where I could learn more about who we were. Who were these great people of history that nobody wants to talk about? Who are we? Where do we come from? And so that's what I'm here to do in terms of leaving my legacy, is to remind people who we are. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of time and if you do research and you find, okay, if we even go back to the Garden of Eden, where is that? That even takes us straight to Ethiopia. You can't get no more centrally located within a black environment or people of color in an environment than Ethiopia. And that's why the Ethiopian Bible, as I told you, William, the other day, is under constant watch. They don't want anyone to get a hold of it because the Ethiopian Bible has 88 books in it.
Absolutely.
Why are there so many books in the Ethiopian Bible, and we're in the current Bible that we have today, those books are left out? That's because we were left out. And so anytime you have to have someone physically guarding something 24 hours a day in the hills to make sure that our legacy stays, that says something. And my whole thing is to let young people know that you are a powerful human being. You come from a very powerful legacy. I just wasn't, as a child, I just could not. I knew some of us were slaves and their family members we can trace back to slavery. My mother's mother, my dad's mother was a slave. And And I remember asking Aunt Cassie, I said, Aunt Cassie, I said, can you tell me a little bit about your mom? Because they were on a plantation in Virginia. I said, could you tell me a little bit about your mom? And she said, sure. And so I said, well, so I said, because I remember as a child asking Daddy, who's that white lady on the mantle? And my dad just looked and he said, baby, that's Mama. And so when I looked at that and I thought about it, and I said, well, can you tell me a little bit about Mama's, can you tell me a little bit about your mom's dad? And she got really mad at me. And she said, what do you think? What else am I going to tell you? I was 12 years old, but she wouldn't explain to her. There's nothing else to tell you. You know what happened. And I'm like, I'm 12. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what happened. Tell me what happened. And later on, I realized that that was the aspect of a part of my history that had the slavery. So I had my mom's side over here that could be traced back to the 1500s, but I had my dad's side over here that was traced back to Virginia in terms of slavery. And so we do have both histories that come together, but the fact that we were left out of the real story is the part that intrigues me. So yes, there is a huge, huge dynamic. And then there's this this African figure, and I'll share it with you so you could share it with others later, is that of one of the oldest human remains found right in Sumter, South Carolina, which is about 25 minutes from from the state's capital in Columbia. It's about maybe an hour away from where my mother grew up with. And when they did the research on his skull, they knew that he was an African American. When they did the skull, it was over 500,000 years old.
Amazing.
So that's the thing that we when we talk about education, and I was a huge proponent of integration when Brown versus Board of Education passed in '54. I wasn't even born yet. My brother was 1 year old 2 years after that, but it took 14 years for the state of South Carolina to even implement integration in some areas, particularly in that Orangeburg area, for those people who aren't familiar with the Orangeburg massacre. I remember picking up the phone as a child, and because my dad was a pastor, he pastored a very large church in Charleston. I remember answering the phone. They would teach us how to answer the phone. Hello, Settle residents, how may I help you? And so the guy on the phone said, may I speak to Mr. Settle, please? And I'm like, yeah, can you tell me what this is about? And he said, yeah, it's the superintendent of education in Columbia, the state superintendent of education. I said, the state superintendent of education is calling our house? Why is he calling? Well, he was calling because they didn't know how they were going to handle integration. So put your hat on for a moment and think about this. And this is a conversation that I have had with spirits so many times. The Supreme Court rules in 1954. It's 1968. That's 14 years. We live in a country where it takes 14 years for someone to get justice. That just, my brother wasn't even born when Brown versus Board of Education in '54 came. He was born the next year. But he was a ninth grader going to integrate a school in Orangeburg County because of the Orangeburg massacre. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it happened in 1968. There was this young guy. His name was Mr. Sellers. You guys know his son, Bakari Sellers, who's on CNN. He's a correspondent with CNN. He also ran he was a representative of the state of South Carolina for a while. And Bakari's father was locked up for being a part of the youth part of SNCC during the civil rights movement. And all he wanted was for us to bowl in the bowling alley. So the South Carolina State Patrol got word of it. They went back to campus for a bonfire because they were going to have this big game the next day on Saturday. And the South Carolina State Patrol came to the bonfire and started shooting these kids in the back as they were running away because somehow they felt threatened. I can't even imagine the South Carolina State Patrol coming on the campus of the other land-grant institution, Clemson University, and doing the same thing. Or the University of South Carolina, which isn't a land grant, but still, and do the same thing. So the whole thing is all political. And I just want people to understand that through taking the opportunity to learn about who you are and learn about your stories, it gives you the opportunity to realize just how important your contribution is. We all bring value. And if I sat here on this phone, on this call, and I sat here and asked each of you could tell me some way that you bring value. And we have to continue to think about that in our lives. How do we bring value? So, to answer your question, there's so much about us that has been hidden, erased, changed. The one that really struck me the most, that kept me, I mean, it's about maybe 5 years ago, that struck me the most was that, oh my God, we are the Native Americans. That's the one that got me.
Yeah.
That's the one that got me because when you go around South Carolina and in Georgia, a lot of the southern states, and even up north, you hear all these names, and because everything vibrates, name vibrate. And I would say, I even asked my mom as a child, I said, Mom, I said, why does everything around here on the coast of South Carolina sound like an Indian name, but there are no Indians? That didn't make sense to me because if you understand the aspect of who the natives were and how they were spiritually tied, but they just used a different people to explain that to us. And so that was the thing that really amazed me so much. I'm here in Metro Atlanta, and I was on this mountain called Arabia Mountain. And Arabia Mountain is about maybe 30 minutes from downtown Atlanta. And I was standing on the mountain with a lady who was giving a tour of the mountain, and I asked her, I said, "Excuse me," I said, "Are there any burial grounds around here?" And she said, "Why, yes, there is." She said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because I can feel them." And she said, "You can actually feel the burial grounds?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "The only reason I can feel them is because I remember feeling them for the first time when I was in Cartersville, Georgia, of the Blackfoot Indian. I remember feeling them when I was there, and that's north of Atlanta, north of Marietta, out that way. And I said, I remember feeling them then. And so she said, "Yes, they are. They're right here." And everybody looked at me. And when you think of the names, I mean, I'll give you some names that are in South Carolina, like PD, the PD River, the Santee River,
Mm-hmm.
up Winyah up near Georgetown, Waccamaw down near Myrtle Beach, Edisto when you're down in Charleston, Wadmalaw, Kiowa. Kiowa Island, I remember when we used to go to Kiowa Island when there were farmers out there when we were kids, and you could just roll into Kiowa Island. It's one of the most expensive resorts to live on in the southeast. And now they have guards guarding everything. You can't really get in. There was land that they didn't want. It was near the marsh. That's where we lived. And all of a sudden, we just disappeared. And when I looked up the makeup, that, 99% of the people who live on Kiowa Island don't look like us. And the other 1% don't look like us either. So it's that here's our homeland. They understand and they know where our homelands are, and they understand and know where the vibrations are, the frequency. Because one thing about metaphysics, when I studied and I learned, was that everything has a frequency, a tone, and a vibration. Some people don't like the words frequency or vibration or whatever, but that's what it is. I mean, I could put my hand on the desk and I can put a speaker underneath and it can be really loud. It will vibrate whether I believe in vibration or not. And I can put my hand on the desk and I can feel it.
Of course.
So those are the stories that I want people to understand, and young people in particular to understand, is that you come from a great history and everybody knows it but us. And because you come from that great history, you're a threat. And all I have to say is they should be threatened. And that's why I love when young people are talking about the things that they're doing and the things that they're creating and the things that they're making their voices heard. That's why that's so important, because the history of us is really deep. And a lot of times when we look at the oral history, a lot of times that was suppressed. So when it was suppressed, what did we do? We created our own language. So in the Low Country, in the Charleston Low Country, we call it the Gullah Geechee language. It doesn't sound like someone speaking the King's English, But if you know it and you listen to it loud enough, you'll have an idea to understand. It's just like learning Spanish or any other language. It's just a different language, but you understand it. And so is that how can I go out and constantly remind people that, you come from a great people. Don't accept the lie that's being told. Why don't you dig a little deeper and understand the truth? And when you dig, you'll find a little bit more truth. And one of the things that I also found out too was that here where we live in the United States is actually a little bit older than across the water. Now think on
Mm,
that for a minute.
mm, yeah,
When you look at the Grand Canyon was once considered which was the Nile.
that's incredible.
So if we can even look at a reversal, that when we look into Africa and we look into Egypt, we're talking about very, very ancient civilizations. But this land has been here for a very long time too.
Of course.
But they just want to say, we're sitting in our living room and all of a sudden Christopher Columbus came through and he decided I discovered you here.
Yeah, right.
So but yeah, but that's, and I'm not saying it in a mean kind of way. I'm just saying it in an enlightening way, that we need to take the opportunity and start digging and thinking into who we are. One of the things that happened in the history that I learned was the reasons why our classification changed, because it went from being native, and then it went from being native to being colored or Negro.
Hmm.
Then we went to black, and then we went to African American. But our true identity is that being native to the soil. However you want to put it, whatever name you want to put on it, that's who we are. We are native to the soil. And let me give you a test. Let me tell you how God is. My brother, my oldest brother, is in his early 70s. He just turned 70, and he's a Kappa, Fisk University graduate. Shout out for HBCU. And one of the things that he did was he did his graduate work at Western Carolina University. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Cullowhee, North Carolina, at Western Carolina University, but it's one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. And it sits in the western part of North Carolina, and it's roughly about 30 minutes from this little town called Cherokee, North Carolina. Okay? So we took a venture out to Cherokee. A lot of people go to Cherokee, North Carolina now because that's where there's a casino there now. Okay? So we were in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I'm with my mom. And I was in the moccasin store because I wanted to get some moccasins, and we had seen the play Unto These Hills. It tells the story of the Trail of Tears. I mean, it was a beautiful story that was told of the Trail of Tears, and I'd read about the Trail of Tears, but again, still, when I'm in high school, early college, I'm still thinking, something doesn't mix here, something doesn't match here. So this old woman walks up to me and my mom. We're outside the store, and she's feeling on my mom's face like this. She's doing this to her face. And then she looked at her, and I asked the young man who was with us, who was an upward bound student of ours back in the day, of my brother's. And his name is Michelle, Michel. Now, Michelle was a student of my brother's when my brother and his wife ran Upward Bound at Western Carolina University. He is also now the current chief of the Cherokee Nation for the Eastern Band. This is his fourth time being in that position. So this was the first time he was the chief of the Cherokee Band about 30 years ago. And so when I was in college, he was like a sophomore in high school, to give you an idea, okay? So I walked up to him and I said, Michelle, I said, can you tell me what the woman is saying in the native tongue to my mom? And he looked at me, he said, yes. He said, he's telling your mother what Indian tribe of the Cherokee Nation that she's a part of.
Mm.
I was like, really? And he said, yes. And she said, it's Cherokee and Muskogee. I said, okay. And people tell that stories that, oh, I heard there's a little bit of Indian in my family. There was Indian in all of our families. This was not an isolated situation, because if you look at the geography, if our family was my mom's family was down in South Carolina on the coast, right down in the low country near Georgetown, then that would be right, because when you think of the Muskogee tribe, the Cherokee tribe are in the western part of Western Carolina, up in the mountains usually, and into the higher parts of North Carolina, where the Muskogee tribe was closer towards Georgia and going towards South Carolina. So it made sense. And so that's when I said, you know what, there's more to the story than there really is. So when you look at it, we are all different parts of the tribe, and we followed the rivers. The rivers were the channels that we followed.
Mm,
And so that's the thing that intrigued me as I started to study more about who were we, where did we come from. And one other thing that I learned is that all the interstate highways that we drive down, those used to be our waterways. Did you guys know that? When I found that out, I was like, really? I'll use Interstate 26, because 26 goes straight down the middle of South Carolina. That used to be the Santee River. We traveled along the rivers because those were our highways. Boats were our mode of transportation, and so that's how we traveled. So now they covered up a lot of the interstates, right, with concrete and everything, and made these huge man-made lakes that they dump all that water in. And so that was just one thing that, if you'd understand how people migrated based on the interstates now as opposed to the rivers, because the interstates were our rivers back in the day. I thought that was phenomenal. Okay, but that's just to give you an idea of some of the stories that I found and how the people differ on the different islands, especially along the coast. And
great,
that's why I call myself a low country spirit teller.
great. I want to go around the panel because I'm sure they are loaded with questions to ask you. I'm going to start with Robert, then we're going to Tanisha, and then Clayton. Robert?
Yeah. So I want to thank you for that. It's an amazing story that you had mentioned, and the way that we used to travel on waterways, that's impressive. It's definitely, it's
Yes.
amazing. And today, you travel on the highways and byways, and the construction people can't even fix a pothole.
Yes.
Yes. Bob, my question to you is the following. Um, Well, basically, the idea you were mentioning that you're talking about the history from the history of our people here in this country. Actually, I did a little research, and your parents and your history dating back to 1542, 1547. Basically, it's cause of I'm seeing that the first Black person came around 1513, if I'm mistaken. His name is Juan Garrido. I hope I'm saying the name right. Who landed in St. Augustine. So yes, that amount of history and time does show that we have been here prior to over 100 years prior to 1619. So definitely that is important information for everybody out there to hear as well, and to
Yes.
follow up
Yes.
on.
It is important. And the other thing is that we were here prior to that too, but that was because of some climatic things that happened to the earth. But we were here before then too, if that makes sense.
Oh yes, it definitely makes sense.
Okay.
One of the questions I like to ask is, you came across, and hopefully as you are a doctoral candidate, and we hope that you do obtain your doctoral in metaphysical science. That is definitely, I give you a lot of credit and props on that. Um, I guess one of the things I also see here is your impact with various different groups and your leadership and your legacy. Can you go into a little bit detail about your leadership roles and where they are specifically?
Okay, sure. Um, well, my leadership role started when we were taught very young that you want to be able to be good at certain things so that you could take on leadership roles. And for me to answer that question, I'd have to go back just a little bit and kind of tell you a little bit about a little bit about my family for about 2 minutes, okay?
Absolutely.
My 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 mother's father, which would be my grandfather, passed away in 1959. He was born in 1996. I mean, sorry, he was born in 1896. My grandfather, okay? And he was born with a sense where his whole family had a lot of land. And I remember when I was doing some research in the archives of the county of Georgetown County, and I looked up in the archives, and it had his income on there. And I remember people talking about how he was able to help so many people in the community. So in today's terms, my grandfather would have been a millionaire. In the 1900s, in the 1800s, late 1800s, going into the early 1800s, in the 1930s, his income was roughly $100,000 in the 1930s. That's like $1.7 million today. And all he was an entrepreneur with a third grade education because there were no schools in the area, but he had enough business acumen to know that if he surrounded himself with people, they could understand, what was going on. So from that is where I learned that if you take the initiative, no matter what your educational background is, no matter what your family lineage is, if you find something that everybody needs and nobody is providing it for you, become very wealthy. So they got mad at him. The Klan took this building he had bought. He had a number of buildings and they burned it to the ground. And he said, "That's okay. It's a good thing I own the whole block. I will build a brick one this time." I mean, that's just that's just the attitude that he had. But he had a lot of land. So he would take all the trees of that land and he would sell the trees to International Paper, which was the largest employer in the entire county of Georgetown. And then he had another supplier where he would take lumber and have lumber trucked all the way down to Savannah, Georgia. And so I'm looking at the footprint and I'm saying, how in the world are you able to manipulate all of that during the 30s? And I remember my mom telling me, she was born in 1924. She said, "I remember as a child, all kind of people knocking on the door said they were hungry." She said the Great Depression came and left, and we never knew the difference. And so I tell people that it doesn't matter what your educational level is. And that's what I'm trying to get young people to understand today. It doesn't matter what your educational level is, as long as you take the opportunity to utilize your mind, because of your ancestors and because of the ancient history that you come from, you already have the capacity to understand very difficult properties to understand simply because the nature of who you're related to and your lineage. And that if we kept listening to people tell us what we can't do, we won't be able to do it. So I'm just utilizing that as an example as to how there's so many different stories that are woven into the story. I mean, he owned about 5 different businesses. He said, "Okay, I live in South Carolina and no one will allow me to go in a restaurant and sit down and eat. So why don't I just put up a big old gas station on the main highway? Why don't I just buy a couple of blocks of land on Main Street? And then why don't I just put all these businesses on Main Street, a dry cleaners, a restaurant, a gas station, all of these things, a funeral home, all of these things, because we're not going to be served by the masses. They're not going to serve us." Then they'll
Absolutely.
realize if you have a majority group of people that look alike and you don't want to sell anything to them, then that makes the other person a whole lot more. And so he took his profits and he took his profit and bought homes for women who were people that worked for him, so that if anything happened to those guys, or and in some point in time they died, then he had some type of shelter for them or homes for them to
Mhm.
live in. So I was like, "Oh my God, that's just like having, having a complex of homes for people, uh, as some means of utilizing a life insurance policy, in the sense that he provided a life insurance policy of a home in case the breadwinner died, because the wife basically had no way of making a whole lot of money to support the family." So I hope I kind of answered your question in that sense, because it's just a matter of realizing the time that we lived in. And because we lived in a time like that, that afforded us the opportunities to have a lot of things that most people didn't have. Now, my dad, on the other hand, he came from up north where all the opportunity was, but there were 13 of them and they struggled really hard. So you have
Mhm.
someone who lives in an environment to where they had to struggle really hard. You have a mother who basically didn't have to struggle really hard to do things other than struggle to make herself the best she could be. And then I realized that you can have two people working very hard coming together. And so that's where all that came from. That's part of my lineage, is that we never can have too much of something. Decide what you want to decide. So for me, metaphysical science means that everything vibrates and everything is energy. So if everything vibrates and everything is energy, where can I put the right energy in my life so that it can vibrate and attract other things in my life? And that's what I teach young people to do. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it does.
I went
Yes,
a
it
long
does.
way around, but just to answer your question.
Got to the end. That's important.
Yes.
Tanisha.
So before I start with my questions, I want to give a shout out to our sister, Kyron Wren, and thank her for being on the show too as well, because she did get off the show. I'm going to try to make this kind of quick. So your grandfather was very, very similar to the man George Tyson, who actually established the Black Myrtle Beach. So a lot of times people didn't realize that with Black Myrtle Beach was a Black Myrtle Beach because a black man owned 47 acres of land, because we weren't allowed to go have fun or go hang out at the beaches in North Myrtle Beach over by a little river. So your grandfather had that same type of concept too as well, right? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
well, he had the same type of concept. He had a number of businesses at Atlantic Beach too,
Oh, okay.
because it was only like a 40-minute ride between the two towns. So Atlantic Beach, my cousins helped him with his business that he started in the 1930s. Then they went on and had this business in Atlantic Beach, called called the Patio Casino, and it was a place where all James Brown, and all the other artists could come and perform. So yeah, so it was something that we grew up learning about. And Atlantic Beach just became a city not too long ago. So it's thriving still, and yes, it was a perfect place to go. And my dad tells the story of how he took my older brother to Atlantic Beach, and his balloon his beach ball crossed the line and went into the white section, and he went running to go get it. He's 3 years old. He doesn't know what that means. And so he grabbed him by the seat of his pants and told him, and the guy threw the ball back. But I mean, can you imagine separating the water? I mean, when I think about it, it just
That's it's silly because we didn't create none of this. God
none
did,
of
so
it.
we didn't create none of this. It really is silly. But I was going to leave off with this. Were you talking about Albert Perry, the guy that had like the oldest chromosome, that was from South Carolina, that was like 5,000 years ago, and he had the Y chromosome that wasn't actually able to be able to detect it when you do the 23andMe or something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay, I was
right from Sumter. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, and it was amazing that they could tell how old he was. It was just, you're like, dang, that's prehistoric when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, but like I said, that's why my stories are like all roads lead to South Carolina, and in particularly, all roads lead to Charleston, because Charleston is the first of a lot of things, because it was one of the first cities in the state at the time.
Wow, wow. I can't believe we almost out of time, but I have to get Clayton in there. But I'm sure he has a
Oh yeah.
question.
Yes, yes. Wow. You have one story. Uh, as I read your bio, I noticed that you were also a financial advisor,
Yes.
and you went from doing that to a doctoral uh, candidate of metaphysical science. Now, first, I want to ask for myself and also the audience that's out there listening, what kind of financial advice would you give someone at this moment uh, that is needed, that we're not doing, that we can tap into to make ourselves better at managing our money.
That's a
And
great. Okay.
and
That's
second, as a candidate of metaphysical science, which is not as tangible, it's more spiritual. Do you tie those two things together?
okay. Both are great questions. Um, yes, I tie them to. First of all, I tie them both together. Metaphysical science and being able to study and to be able to manage money, because money needs nothing but energy. That's all money is. It's energy, and it's energy because when you exchange it for, you can exchange it for something else, and it can change circumstances. Think about it. If you think about people that people can actually get sick, die, and everything, worrying about money. Just just the thought of it, lack of it, or sometimes if they have too much of it, and not knowing what to do with it. So anything that you exchange for something else is considered energy. So that's why they're both similar in the same way. I basically kind of lucked into this job. I was in a school one day, and most of my clients were school teachers, and most school teachers were married to business owners for some reason, and then or that worked for and husbands that worked for corporations. And so what I did was I would go in and say, okay, tell me what it would look like if all of your financial everything in your financial situation would be in order, and they would tell me. And so what I would do, instead of me trying to sell somebody something like a lot of people in the industry were doing, I tried to solve the problem of what was wrong with them, and or what they thought was something they needed to improve on. So from a financial standpoint, the best thing I can tell you is you got to make more. You have to make more. You have to have more coming in than you have going out. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's the basic thing that I learned. You have to have more coming out. And so, what are things that will cause money to come out? A death of a spouse or a loved one, because now you don't have another income to go together. You lost your job or quit your job. That's another thing that could adjust your income a lot, or the fact that or fact that maybe you want to retire early or something like that. So I got people to think about what would be how much money that you would need in order for you to do what you needed to do. Then, based on their circumstance, I would work a program with them as to what they needed to do. So it was very structured. Yes, I had products, but those products were determined based on what was going on with the person themselves. So that's basically how that worked. And so the reason it works with metaphysical science is that what we have and we don't have is based on how we think
Hmm.
and what we believe to be true for us. I mean, you can think about being rich all day long, but if you don't realize that you can have it and achieve it, if you don't realize that there's a step or a process that you could use to get you to the next step, then you don't understand the beauty of it. See, we have to think it, believe it, and be it before it comes to us.
True.
That's the work. I mean, when someone says, well, tell me how much money would make your life a whole lot better. And so let's just say somebody says, oh, $1 million. And you would say, well, that's all. So in the real life, you have to say, well, okay, let me factor some things in. Am I going to be taxed on that money? So now that million is now 500,000. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because we're playing games we're playing games in a system that doesn't play fair. So because of that, you have to look at different things and say, what does it mean to me? So my whole thing is I work with people from the metaphysical side, which is the thought side, to think about what is it that you want to create in your reality. And if I can teach you how to be that before it comes, then it comes. You can't say that and then wish for it to come. It won't come from wishing. You have to already be that. Does that make sense?
Yes. It
Because
does.
of vibration and frequency. Things alike attract each other. Likes attract, right? That's a basic metaphysical stance. Likes do attract. So if I'm sitting here saying, I want $10 billion, or I want $1 million, or I want a big house, or whatever, and I'm thinking, oh my God, all I got is $20 in the bank, Lord, how am I going to make it? Those two can't ever line up. Does that make sense?
It does.
They can never line up. And so that's the hardest part that we have is to be able to have the consistent thought of what we want in our lives. And that's what I strive myself on now, teaching young kids, because they're the ones that are in trouble. I live next door to a school that has one of the lowest scores of students doing well in school in the state of Georgia. And I went over and talked to the principal, and I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I cannot live on the property line next to this school and not do something about it. And so she cried. She cried with me when we were in a meeting one day, saying, I prayed for something like this to happen. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. And so that's like one of the projects that I'm working on right now with this principal. She just doesn't have a clue what she needs to do. And getting the kids to school is one thing. I'm like, Dad, you live right around the corner. Why can't you go to get to school? You live around the corner, the kids in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? What? Why can't you get to school? Well, the parents are busy working. They leave home 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning to get in the Atlanta traffic to go all the way across town to work. And they leave the first grader to get up to the third grader to make sure the third grader fix the breakfast and get them up to go to school. Sometimes it's like, I'm not doing that today. So they don't show up. So we have to look at it and think of it in that aspect. So just to answer your question that way, that's how you do that. You find out what that person desires in their life, and then you find a way in order to help them do that. Not how can I help myself make this money, but how can I help somebody achieve what they're trying to achieve? And that's the path that we're going to have to be on. If we don't start being that way, look at this country. Look at the state of this country right now, based on greed and self-fulfillment. And everybody's trying to grab theirs before somebody grabs theirs. We'll never make anything happen with that mindset. The mindset that we have to have is that we are already creators. We are part of the ancient aspect of those who understood the spirit. Whether that is God, whether that is Jesus, whether that is Jehovah, whoever that is for you, we know that there is, most of us can agree that there's a source bigger than us, greater than us, that if we align to those aspirations of what it is for us to be good and for us to feel good in our lives, that there's a certain way that we can make it through. And that's what I honestly believe. And so that's how I can bring these two together, because I have to live in the spirit world and I have to live in man's world.
Oh boy.
So I got to figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
Excellent.
Iris, unfortunately, we are out of time. We've gone over. I've got another show that's supposed to start in about 6 minutes, but would you come back, please? We need your energy, your spirit, your knowledge, and I love your approach to, wow. What a great episode. Thank you guys so much. Robert, Tanisha, Clayton, and especially you, Iris. And I want to thank Ciaran for coming on at the first part, but we will have you back because you have a lot to tell, and we're just scratching the surface. Man, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
For episode 122 of Groove Swing Speaks. Guys, check us out each and every Tuesday, same time, same station. That's 7 p.m. on the East Coast, 4 p.m. on the West, 6 Central Time. Guys, enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you later.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you,
coming.
William. Appreciate it. Much love, you guys.
All right.